All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into some, well, frankly, kind of wild claims about a potential assassination plot against Colombia's President Gustavo Petro.
Yeah, it's definitely caught our attention too.
And the source for all this, a YouTube video, which, right off the bat has me going, should we be taking this seriously?
Healthy skepticism is always a good starting point for sure.
But, and this is a big but, it's gotten people talking, and the implications are huge if any of this is even remotely true. So let's unpack this, shall we? Carefully.
Absolutely. And you're right. Even just the suggestion of an assassination plot in Colombia carries a lot of weight. You can't separate it from the country's history, the political violence, the targeting of leaders.
Which is what makes this whole thing so unsettling. It's tapping into some very real fears.
Exactly. Especially when it comes to leftist leaders like Petro, who challenge the status quo. There's a tragic pattern in Colombia's past, and this video, even if it's completely baseless, plays on those anxieties.
Okay, so context is clearly key here, but let's get into the actual allegations. Who are these supposed assassins, and what's the story?
Well, according to this YouTube video, Petro was warned about the plot directly by the U.S. ambassador to Colombia. And get this, the ambassador allegedly cited U.S. intelligence as the source.
Hold up, U.S. intelligence is involved now. This is starting to sound like a spy movie.
Right. Definitely grabs your attention. But before we go full conspiracy theory, it is important to remember that the U.S. has, shall we say, a history of involvement in Colombian affairs, and that includes intelligence gathering.
True, true. I mean, you can't talk about U.S. intelligence in Colombia without mentioning, like, the whole Iran-Contra scandal back in the 80s.
Exactly. U.S. intelligence agencies were deeply involved in the Colombian drug war. So this alleged U.S. connection, while shocking, isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility.
Okay, fair point. But what about the details of this alleged plot against Petro? How are they saying he'd be targeted?
So the video throws out some scary scenarios, really tries to ramp up the tension. Car bombs are mentioned, and even, this is where it gets weird, a cryptic reference to coordinates that were supposedly provided by the ambassador.
Coordinates? That's ominous. It's like they're hinting at something even more precise than just, like, a car bomb attack.
Yeah, and that vagueness is where things get really murky. The video blames this plot on, wait for it, mafias and powerful figures threatened by Petro's policies. Which, okay, what does that even mean?
Right, mafias. That could be anything. Are we talking about, like, organized crime, drug cartels, or is this more about powerful individuals with a vested interest in maintaining the status quo? I need some specifics here.
And that's exactly the problem. The video uses these loaded terms, throws around accusations without ever really defining who these shadowy figures are. Drug cartels, paramilitary groups, corrupt business elites, and most importantly, where is the evidence linking them to this alleged plot? These are questions the video conveniently avoids.
So we're left with a very serious allegation, but the source is questionable and the details are incredibly vague. It kind of makes you wonder, what's the real purpose of this video?
Right, is this a genuine warning or an attempt to manipulate public opinion? Or both. I mean, we can't ignore that this video doesn't just accuse shadowy figures in U.S. intelligence. There's also a whole section focused on the media's role in all this.
Ah, yes. The media angle. And it's not pretty, is it? It's like they're saying there's this whole other conspiracy to silence Petro's warnings.
Yeah, the video claims certain media outlets are deliberately downplaying or even flat out dismissing these assassination threats. And it goes even further, accusing some of trying to paint Petro as, like, paranoid or unstable.
To discredit him, basically.
Exactly. If they can convince people that Petro's just being paranoid, then no one will take the threat seriously. And the video specifically calls out publications like El Espectador, accuses them of pushing this whole Petro's orchestrating a coup narrative.
Which, let's be real, plays right into those existing anxieties about leftist leaders in Latin America.
100%.
Yeah.
It's all about shaping the narrative. And in Colombia, the media landscape, it's complicated, to say the least. You've got outlets with deep ties to specific political factions, business interests.
So it's not just what's being reported, but who's doing the reporting and what they stand to gain.
Precisely.
Yeah.
You always have to consider the source. And historically, certain media outlets in Colombia have not exactly been neutral observers.
Like we always say, follow the money.
Right. Follow the money, follow the power. And in this case, it seems like the media landscape itself might be part of the story. Because if these accusations are true and powerful media outlets are downplaying the threats or portraying Petro as unstable, that could have a chilling effect on public opinion. People might be less likely to believe he's in danger, less likely to support any measures to protect him.
It's a scary thought.
It really is. And it highlights why understanding the media, like really understanding it, is so important, especially in a situation like this.
It's not enough to just read the headlines.
Not at all. You got to go deeper. Understand the historical context, the ownership structure of the outlets involved, their past reporting on Petro and his policies. It's like you have to learn to read between the lines.
Look for those hidden biases that might be shaping the narrative.
Absolutely. And that brings us to Petro's own response to all of this. Because according to the video, he's not exactly keeping quiet.
Oh no, he's going on the offensive.
He's coming out swinging.
Yeah.
The video describes him taking a very, I would say, defiant stance, publicly calling out the elites he claims are behind this plot.
Okay, so let's talk about these elites. Who are we talking about here? Because the video is pretty vague on specifics.
All right, another example of these kind of loaded terms being thrown around. But in the Colombian context, elites could refer to a whole range of powerful actors. You've got wealthy landowners, industrialists, these entrenched political dynasties.
Elements within the military, maybe? Intelligence services?
Oh, absolutely. Anyone who benefits from the status quo and sees Petro as a threat to their power. And remember, his entire platform has been about challenging these entrenched interests, tackling inequality. So it's not surprising that he sees them as a threat.
Is he playing politics with this? I mean, there's a certain political logic to presenting yourself as the target, right? The underdog fighting against these corrupt forces.
It's a classic tactic for a reason. It
Yeah.
resonates, especially in a country with Colombia's history, but it's also a risky strategy.
Because what if he can't back up these accusations? What if he doesn't have the evidence?
It could backfire big time, make him look like he's exploiting this whole situation for political gain. And that could end up undermining his credibility in the long run.
So it's a delicate balance.
Yeah.
He's walking a tightrope.
Exactly. Trying to expose what he believes is a very real threat, while also being careful not to fuel a dangerous narrative that could spiral out of control.
Yeah.
And then on top of all that,
Don't forget the international angle.
right, we can't ignore that. Because this whole thing started with a supposed warning from U.S. intelligence.
Which is huge GE.
Absolutely massive. I mean, even if we take everything else in this video with a grain of salt, the fact that it's out there publicly linking U.S. intelligence to an alleged plot against a democratically elected leader, it adds a whole other layer of complexity to the situation.
Especially given the history between the U.S. and Colombia, which, let's be honest, is complicated, to say the least.
To put it mildly, there's a lot of baggage there. So even if this video is completely baseless, even if it's totally fabricated, it has the potential to stir up anti-U.S. sentiment, fuel conspiracy theories, and complicate diplomatic relations between the two countries.
It's like throwing a match on a pile of dry kindling.
The results could be unpredictable and potentially very damaging.
So, wow, where do we even go from here? I mean, we've got this whole web of potential misinformation, historical baggage, and very real dangers. It's a lot to unpack.
It really is. And I think the million-dollar question is, what does this all mean for Colombia, for Petro's presidency?
Right. Is he strategically using this situation to his advantage, maybe exaggerating the threat to shore up support?
It's definitely possible. A common enemy can be a powerful, unifying force, right?
For sure, especially if that enemy just so happens to fit the narrative he's already been pushing about fighting against, these entrenched elites.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, dismissing these threats entirely as just like political maneuvering, that could be incredibly dangerous if they turn out to be credible.
Yes, we can't forget that. There are real risks here.
And then there's the whole issue of unintended consequences. Even if Petro isn't deliberately trying to, stir the pot with anti-U.S. sentiment, this whole thing could easily escalate and damage Colombia's relationship with a key ally.
It's a mess, basically, and it's hard to know what to believe. So how do we even begin to make sense of it all? What should we be looking out for as this story develops?
I think the key is to be really, really vigilant. Critically evaluate every single piece of information that comes out.
Don't just take this video at face value.
Exactly. Look for independent verification. What are other credible sources saying, both inside and outside Colombia?
Are there investigations underway? What are other political figures saying about this?
All of that. Basically, don't rely on just one source for your information. And be wary of anything that seems, overly sensationalized or designed to push a specific agenda.
Good advice for, life in general these days.
Right. Information overload is real.
It's overwhelming. But, okay, stepping back, this has been quite the deep dive. We started with a YouTube video about a potential assassination plot against President Petro.
And we ended up in a much bigger conversation about misinformation, media bias, the complexities of U.S.-Colombian relations,
The fragility of Colombian politics in general. It's a lot.
to say the least. But that's kind of the point of these deep dives,
To
right?
go beyond the headlines.
Exactly. Dig into the nuances, ask the tough questions. And sometimes the most important discoveries are the ones you least expect.
Couldn't have said it better myself. To everyone listening, thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it's given you some new perspectives on the situation in Colombia and maybe even inspired you to learn more. Just remember to stay curious, stay critical, and keep asking those tough questions.